Hello lovely people, I'm K3N and welcome to week 13 of the Slow Stitch Along for 2024. I can't believe we're at week 13 already. That means that we're a quarter of the way through. So this week I wanted to celebrate friendship because I've made many friends with people through the Facebook group and Instagram and in the comments here. And I think it's important to recognise that we don't actually have to meet each other in person to consider ourselves friends. So this week I've gone with a traditional quilt block, but we're going to do it in a kind of more wonky way. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you enjoy learning the technique, particularly for being able to make two triangles. Sorry, a big dog's coming up. Hello, hello big dog. He's not in shot, unfortunately. Sorry. Now Stella's saying hello and banging her tail against the radiator. It's all, you know, it's all happening here. So I hope you enjoy it. It's called Friendship Star, so I thought it was appropriate. And I'm sorry I can't talk about week 11 and 12 because I'm actually filming this in advance because I'll be in England whilst this is happening for a week delivering my work for the exhibition. So anyway, enjoy, and I look forward to talking more about week 11 and 12 and this week. Next week when we're in week 14. Okay, look forward to seeing you soon. Okay, so the Friendship Star. This is a traditional quilt block, and it's made using half square triangles, which can be problematic because it involves stitching. If you just cut out two half square triangles, you're then stitching along the bias edge of the fabric, which can be very stretchy. So there's another way of doing it, which is very commonly used by quilters when they're machine piecing, but we're going to do it by hand stitching. So what you'll need is, I'm going to do it just in two different cloths. In principle it's a 9 patch, so I'm just going to use two contrasting cloths, but you could of course make it more scrappy. And also when I've made my little block, I'm going to stitch it onto a foundation square, just because I like to do that. And this is just a bit of old linen, but could be a bit of sheet or another cotton fabric, or you know, whatever. You need some thread for piecing. I've just got some of my vintage Silco, nearly used up, so then I'll have another meditation scroll in the making. Although I've been so busy lately doing other things, I've not had time to do any scrolls. I must make time for that. And then I've got some of this. This is my precious silk that someone gave me years ago, a friend of mine, because I want to do some embellishment stitching afterwards. So if you've got embroidery floss, or if you like to use cotton perlé or whatever, just some, you know, something to go with your colours that you choose. A needle, maybe some applique pins, a pencil, a ruler, and some fabric scissors. And that's basically all you need. So the first thing I'm going to do is make 4 little half square triangle units. Now I want my piece to finish up so that it fits in my book somewhere in the region of 4 inches. And there are ways of calculating this exactly when you do it, you know, as a proper quilter, which involves 7/8 of inches and things like that. And I don't really want to do it like that because this is going to be a little art piece. I don't know why I always feel the need to do inverted commas. So I'm going to start with squares that are in the region of a couple of inches. I'm probably going to rip that end off because it's already partly ripped. And then that should, just checking, yeah, that's a couple of inches wide, that strip. So that should, I've said it 3 times now, make for a block that's about the right size. If I can find a link, in case anybody's interested, to that, I'm sure on the internet there are millions of resources. There'll be a table somewhere saying if you want your finished square to be such a size, you need to start with squares that are such a size. If I can find a link and I remember, I will put it in the description. Otherwise, if you Google quilting half square triangles, I'm sure you'll find something. I'm being very careful tearing this because it's quite fragile. I've got my strip the right size. Sorry, I was wittering on about half square triangles. I've got my strip a couple of inches wide, and then I'm just turning it, folding it on its diagonal like that, and snipping. You see what I'm doing? So that I end up, you know, with 2 squarish pieces. So, and I'm going to save that because I'll need that in a minute. but I'm not going to cut the rest of the squares yet. All will be revealed. So I've got 2 of my blue, and now I want 2 of my, this is a bit of blue and white that's not been in the tea for a change. So now I'm going to use, am I even in shot? I'm going to use the square I just made to measure, and I'm going to turn it that way because I only need 2 screws. Oh no, go that way, go that way. I will need another square of this as well later on. Doesn't matter. So I'm going to use this as basically as a template because I want 2 squares of this the same size. And this is quite fine, open weave, and it goes a bit like that. Sorry, I keep creeping towards me. I've got you lower down, and I'm sat slightly further, slightly away from my desk, because otherwise I bang my head on the light and make you wobble. So that's why I have a tendency. Now I'm going to cut that because it's, I can feel it wanting to tear along its you know, along its grain. I'm going to cut. If you are ever using one template, one piece as a template to cut multiple others, it's a good idea to always use the same piece, because if you cut that and use that to cut that, and then use that to cut that, and then use that, and so on and so on, if you're ever so slightly out with the first one and subsequent ones, I hope I'm explaining this, by the time you've cut 20 of them, say, you might be half an inch out. Do you see what I mean? Because your slight errors in cutting will mount up. So it's fine, I think, to use one piece as a template to cut the others, but always use the same piece, is my advice. Right, so now we've got, I need to do drawing, so I'll need to bring this little mat in for a minute. That cloth over there, sorry for my arm. So I'm going to put these 2, one of each, right sides together. Now this has a right side because it's printed cotton. My indigo doesn't really. And I'm going to put it, in my case, with the white side up. The white, not the right. The white, you know, the paler side up. So that's my little unit of that one. And I'll do the same here, because I'm going to draw with pencil, and if I try to do it on the blue, I wouldn't be able to see probably, and you certainly wouldn't. And then I'm going to take my pencil and a ruler. If you haven't got a ruler, just use, you know, something straight-ish. And I'm just going to draw a line from one corner, from one corner to the other. Just a diagonal line. You don't have to have them stacked up for this. You could do this first and then match them together. In fact, that probably would have been more sensible. And so I've got a very soft pencil. This is my 4B pencil. You could also use one of those blue pens or anything really. And do the same with both of them. So do you see what I'm doing? Just from one diagonal corner to the other. And I find it better if do you see how I'm going backwards and forwards rather than softly, and then you don't pull it all out of true. And then I'm getting some of my applique pins. And I'm going to put the pins in well away from that line, sort of over here somewhere. On each side. Like that. We can get rid of this mat actually, because it's not pretty. And the same with this one. Okie dokie. Now I'm going to get my piecing thread, which is just, you know, this Silco cotton, but any fine cotton thread. And I'm going to sew 2 lines of stitching, and I'm going to sew them not on the line, don't stitch on the line, but either side of the line. So let me come up and make sure it's focused. So I'm going to put 1 line of stitching here, about 1/4 inch away-ish, and another line of stitching here, about 1/4 inch away-ish. And I'm going to do that with, I'm going to stop and start my thread each side. I'm not going to jump across, because we're going to cut on that line in a bit. And I'm going to do that with both pieces. So I hope that's clear. I'm going to do a running stitch. So I'm going to start there somewhere. Let me bring myself up. into focus. Maybe start with the back stitch. And if you wanted to make these, you know, to make a thing, a proper thing, rather than something that's an art piece, let's call it, you could do your piecing running stitch with a back stitch every, that's happened now, every couple of stitches, you know, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I think it's called putting in a locking back stitch. Let's talk amongst yourselves while I sort my thread out. Have I? What's happened? Have I come up where I should have gone down? I'm going to have to unthread. I've done something weird. Done something really weird, and I've caught my thread. That's okay, I have to just rethread my needle, that's all. But because I'm just making a little thing to go in my book, and also it's going to have loads of other stitching in it before I'm done, I'm just going to do a running stitch. Oops. I hope you can see. I should really have chosen. I must get into the habit of not thinking about what goes with what and thinking more about what you can see. But I'm just doing a running stitch about slightly less than, in fact, 1/4 of an inch from that line I drew. If you wanted to draw yourself 2 other lines, you know, a measure, if that makes you happy, you do you. I'm going to insert the name Wonky in front of my star, and that gives me the freedom to not worry about being perfect. But that's just what I like to do these days. Doesn't mean you have to. Right, so 2 back stitches on. I'm going to get that ruler away because it's metal, and every time I touch it, it makes an unpleasant sound. Cut that off. And I can take that pin out now because that side's held with stitching. In fact, I often do it even without the pins. You could try that. If it's a little patch like this, it doesn't really need the pin for me. I'm just going to do the same thing the other side, not on the line, but a 1/4 inch-ish away from the line. And yes, I really wanted a word of the week to be friendship because of all the friendships that I am forming with people who watch me and comment here and tag me on Instagram and so on, and on Facebook and in the Facebook group. And also I see friendships forming between people in the Facebook group and on Instagram and actually on YouTube, you know, because I've mentioned other channels. And between myself and other YouTubers, it's just a real feeling of community. And then I just love it when I go on to a YouTuber who I follow's channel and I see people there saying, K3N told us to come, and they're now subscribing to that person. And yeah, it's just giving me the warm fuzzies. So I've done that one. I'll hold it up to show you. So that's why I thought, let's do friendship, and this friendship star seemed the perfect way. I hope you can see. Can you see my 2 lines of running stitch either side of the drawn line? Okay, so I'm going to do exactly the same thing with the other one. Because I think it really is friendship. You know, it doesn't mean you don't have to meet people in real life to feel a friendship bond with them. So I just wanted to say that. So I'm going to do the same along here. I hope that the shadows are okay. I don't know why that is. It seems to be since I swapped my room around. I've got my desk on the other side of the room. I've played with the curtain behind me to see if that's made a difference, but I have noticed since I moved the desk over here that there seems to be more shadows. I don't know why that is. I hope it's you know, not irritating. A couple of back stitches to finish that and cut it off. If you were going to do this on a sewing machine, people do, if you're not a quilter, it's called chain piecing. So if you wanted to make a big quilt using lots of these, you would put them all point to point and sew through, you know, all of them together, or a whole line of them at once like that, all along one side, and then at the end you turn and come back the other way. Then you wouldn't worry about your threads in between because it's machine sewing, and you just cut through the thread and it would be fine. But we're not doing machine sewing, we're doing hand sewing, so we have to cut and start again. Oh, do you know, see what? Now, you really have to, it's so tempting, and do you see what I've done? I've sewn on the line. It's just the line sitting there looking at you, inviting you to sew on it, but that's not what you do. It's not what you do, Catherine. So either side of the line. Oh dear, dear, dear. I can't thread my needle again. There we go. No, we don't. I'm going to have to snip the end. I've got both dogs and Fred in here at the moment. The big dog took it into his head to come upstairs. I don't know why, he doesn't often. Because the stairs are wood, you know, there's no carpet or anything on them. And they're a bit slippery for him and with his arthritic hips. But he just felt like being up here with me, so he's come up. Sorry, I'm really struggling to thread this needle now. There we go, done it. Right, do not sew on the line. Sew 1/4 of an inch away from the line. Or thereabouts, or something in millimetres. What is it, about 7 millimetres, something like that. And you don't have to, you know, if you like these the look of these half square triangles, you can use them in other ways, other layouts. There's you know, nearly endless layouts you can do. And you can look up, there's lots of resources online. If you're not a quilter, just look up traditional quilting blocks and take them as inspiration for making pieces for Slowstitch, and, you know, do them wonky. Or that's pretty much what I did with log cabins. I sort of looked at log cabins and I used to make them in the traditional way, machine piecing and so on. And then you'd start sort of deconstructing the idea of them and what is it about them that draws you. And then you just play and do them in other ways. Right, so I've got that, my 2 units. Now I'm going to cut on the line where I didn't stitch, on the drawn line, the pencil line. There's one. There's 2. And then you open them up. Sorry, that's serious grumbling and trying to get comfortable. You open them up and you see you've got 2 half square triangles, slightly wonky, with ears. And I've pressed the seam and I'm doing it towards the dark fabric, both, you know, in one direction, not open. Just because that, you know, it hides it behind the dark fabric. Later on I will be pressing seams open, which is not traditionally done a lot in quilting, but I'm going to because I want it to lay it flat. So you see it's not exactly square by any stretch of the imagination, but it's square enough. So I'm going to do that with all of them. If you want to go and iron them, of course you're allowed, but you know I'm not gonna. Cut the ears off. They call those dog ears, I do believe. Calling these half square triangles, you'll see them referred to, if you're not a quilter and you go looking into that world, as HSTs. And when I used to teach traditional quilting in workshops in person, there was one lady, she was an absolute hoot. She's a very elegant older lady, but she had us in stitches, literally, pardon the pun. But she used to call them, I think it was accidental, I don't think she did it on purpose, but she used to call them HRTs, which I'm sure you all know is hormone replacement therapy, which ladies of a certain age sometimes benefit from. Right, so I've got my 4 little dog ears away. My 4 little squares, and you see that's much smaller than that. Those 2 are generally much smaller than those 2, but I'm not worried. Now, the next thing you have to decide, and actually I did prepare one earlier just to give you an idea. You see this one? You have to decide whether you want your star to be made of the light colour, if you've gone with 2 colours, on my case, in the blue background, Fred hair, or you could have had a blue star on a white background, because that determines how many other squares you cut. So for this with the white star, I needed 1 more square of the white and 4 squares of the blue. Obviously it would be vice versa if you went the other way. Now I am going to use these as a template to cut the others, but because these are way bigger, I'm going to use the smaller ones. So if that happens to you, use the smaller templates to cut, because the bigger ones you can just make them fit. So I'm going to do the same as I did there, I think, do a white star for the centre. So I'm just literally going to lay this on here. See, this is super wonky. This is just, all I want it to do is vaguely look like a star. I'm not worried about matching points or making it fit with any other kind of block. If you wanted to make several of them and make them all fit together, then you maybe have to pay more attention than that. So there's my centre square. I'm going to keep that as my template square. There's my centre square. And then you need to think a little bit. I always lay things out, otherwise I'll get them wrong, about your diagonals. So this one, here you can see, I've put, so the right angle is here to my right, and the diagonal is running that way. And so the next one, I need to have the right angle here. I think for me the easiest way to remember is to make sure that your diagonal lines are not going in the same direction. Do you see? So if I put it like that, I'm not going to get a star. They're parallel. They need to be, that diagonal line's that way and that one's that way. So then this next one, the diagonal line can't be that way, parallel. It needs to be that way, perpendicular. Do you see what I mean? I hope you see what I mean. But lay them out and make sure it looks right. And there again, do you see that line's perpendicular to that line? And now I've got my star. And now I need 4 blues for the corners. Just get my bit of blue. There's that one I was using. And I'm going to just cut myself. Sorry, I'm gone out of shot again. I'm going to cut this now because it's quite fragile. This is a bit of old sheet. And if I tear it, it's in danger of disintegrating. So there's one. And again, I'm using the same piece every time for the template. You see that I'm already way off everywhere, but I can at least try. I could, of course, have cut a strip the right width. Whoops, very wonky. Very wonky today. Super wonky. Really, really badly wonky. 3. I'm going to have to raise my chair up a little bit, I think. My chin's nearly on my desk, I'm so low. One more. Just cut this and then I'm going to raise myself up a bit and really try hard not to headbutt you. Sorry, I've gone out of shot, but I'm just cutting a square around my previous square. There we go. Those little bits can all go in the scraps. And I'm going to put that back where it belongs. Not that way. Do you see straight away that's needs to be that way. Look at that. Oh dear, dear, dear. I'm gonna just trim that a bit more in the hope that it then is the right size. Good enough. So that one will go there. That one, also wonky, will go there. That one will go there. And that one will go there. So now I just need to sew all those together. Excuse me a minute. I'm going to push out and come up a bit. So same way as you would do a 9 patch, if you know how to do that kind of thing. I'm going to join them into 3 rows of 3, and then I'm going to join the rows together. So I'm just going to pick up these 2, put them right sides together. If you have done the Japanese rice bag, or you've seen that video where I made that with a 9 patch. In fact, you could make a 9 patch with these stars. That would be quite not a 9. A rice bag with these stars. That would be quite. No, I'm going too far the other way. That would be quite wonderful. I think maybe I'll do one of those one day. But I'm just going to do a running stitch. Again, not the locking back stitch, because it's good enough for these purposes. Sorry, I'm stitching on the blue, so you probably can't see. But I'm just doing a running stitch, again about 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. And then I'm going to do a back stitch, or maybe 2. And trim that. And then I'm going to open that up, and I'm going to make that seam go towards the single piece of cloth, because if I put it this way there's going to be a big lump in that corner. Do you see what I mean? So you see it naturally wants to go that way anyway. Again, I'm only going to finger press it, but I don't have to tell you that you are allowed to iron. And then I lay it down where it goes, and then I take the next one and flip it over, and that is the only way that I can make sure that I keep things the right way round. And the same thing again. Just stitching along 1/4 of an inch away, starting with a back stitch, or thereabouts from the edge of that cloth. You know, a seam. What do they call that? A seam allowance. 1/4 inch seam allowance ish, in the region of. Doesn't really matter. The less accurate you are, the more wonky it will be, and I like wonky, so. But again, if it bothers you and you want to measure, if you don't, easily see a 1/4 inch seam allowance, measure and draw a line to follow. No harm in that. I'm going to get rid of that thread into the aughts and get a new bit in a minute. So again, it's the same thing. You want to then, you see it naturally wants to go that way. Just finger press that down. You see the back? So in the middle there is a half square triangle, and the 2 seams are going out from it. So I'll lay that back in its place, get more thread. I'll just put my needle now. Did I stick it in my pincushion? That went easier. So now I'm going to do exactly the same with the middle row, and then you should be able to see better because the cloth is then a contrasting colour. So I'm going to do this to this, flip it over, right sides together, pick it up and stitch along there. Start with the back stitch. Whoops, whoopsie. Don't know why I chose such fragile little cloths. They're not tricksy, they're just a bit fragile. I just felt like doing blue and white. Back stitch, snip, and now this one you want the seam to go towards the the single piece of cloth, just again for the bulk. And that will also serve when you come to join it to this. That seam's going that way, this seam's going that way, so it'll mean you don't have a big bunch in the middle. We might as well, you know, do our best to make it neat as, you know what I mean. Not neat, but you know. If it's possible to do without stressing us out, we might as well do it. If it's really frayed, we'll see what happens. Oops, sorry, do you see I just head-butted you? I've actually now got my forehead leaning on the light. Shouldn't do that, that will make you wobble. What I need to try and find a way to do with the setup that I've got is have the light higher and the camera lower, because there's no reason why the light needs to be this low. The light could be, it's a ring light, you know, so that the camera's in the middle, so it doesn't cast a shadow. Because I can't, in this room, rely on natural lighting. Right. You'll never be able to see anything. So that seam's going also towards a single patch, you know, the single piece of cloth. It'll look a bit weird at the moment, but hopefully it'll all look okay in a minute. The last line. So this video will be up. You'll be watching this. I'll have been to England and I'll be home again. So I'm pre-recording. I will be home, but I'll be home last night late. I think I land at somewhere around 10 PM and it's a 2.5 hour drive from home. So I will have been late. So I wouldn't not have had time then to, you know, get this video ready for the Monday morning, obviously. So I'm pre-recording them a couple of weeks in advance. So again, I can't talk about the last week's project because it hasn't happened yet for me. I have recorded it, and but you won't have seen it yet, so. It's a bit strange, it's a bit discombobulating. So same thing, I find it easier to press on the right side of the piece. So I'm feeling underneath with my finger and thumb, that with my fingers underneath and my thumbs on top, that the seam is going that way. But then you can sort of push against the seam and just thumb press it down. And there's no need to get the iron involved unless you want to. Do you see now it's really elongated because the seams have been taken in. I've taken it in this way but not that way. But it'll all be sorted out in a minute, we hope. So I just flip that onto there, pick it up, stitch it together. Oh, sorry. Oh dear, I'm so sorry. Stop making sudden movements, Catherine. And head-butting the people and making them wobble. Yeah, because actually in my real time, we've just been in the woods for last week's video. And we came home from the woods. When I say we, I mean me and the dogs. And we had some some lunch, excuse me, and then we came up and started doing this one. So yeah, it feels very strange. Okay, so that's all my patches joined into rows. So same again, you see if I would now just flip that up with my thumbs and then press that seam with my thumbnails, and then it lays flatter. So now I need to join the rows together. Now if you want to get pins involved at this stage, you absolutely can. I showed my obsessive point matching pinning in the Japanese rice bag video. I'm going to see how they behave if I just hold them. So do you see here I've got one seam allowance going that way and one going this way, and those should, when you've measured and done it all accurately, neatly nest together rather than overlapping. They sort of butt up against each other. So if you want to do that and then put a pin in it to hold it still and then go to the other side, do you see I'm way out there? So what I could do is just put them together where they should be and then see if I then hold each side, will the cloth stretch so that they go into place? Yes, it more or less will. So I'm going to pin them where they should be, again more or less, and stitch along there and see what happens. It's exciting, isn't it? It's exciting to see how rubbish my stitching will end up. No, it won't be rubbish, it'll be charming and wonky, and I shall like it. Now when you come up to the seam allowance, I'm going to take the pin out of the way. The proper way to do it is not to stitch through your seam allowances. I talked about it in the rice bag video. So, and I might as well show you the proper way, and then you can, you know, make your choice. So you should push that seam allowance away. The other one's already going that way. And then take your final stitch or two right up against your previous stitching line. If you don't care about this stuff, don't do it, just stitch your seam allowances down. And then I always then take another back stitch on that same spot, and then I put my needle through, you can see this, put my needle through the base of that seam allowance so that I come out the other side of it, do you see? So the seam allowance is standing free. And then I push the other seam allowance on the back to my right, so that I can stitch away there without stitching that one down either. That is, give or take, the proper way. If you don't care about doing it the proper way, like I said, just stitch your seam allowances down. No one's going to tell you off, or I'm certainly not. Pin out. So here is the seam allowance on the back that I need to push out of the way, so I don't stitch it down. So apparently I'm going to try and do it properly. And then a back stitch. The back stitch there, just because it's a junction of seams, just holds it a bit more securely. And through the base of that seam allowance. And then make sure both the seam allowances are pushed to your right. You see what I'm doing there? And then stitch away again. Once you're away from them, you can let them go. You know, I do like to show you the proper way, and then I nearly said give you permission. That sounds pompous, and it's not really what I mean. Enable you, say it's okay to not worry about it. But the option's there. Oops. Right, so I'll do a couple of back stitches just to finish off. And then we'll lay that out and see what we've got. Hopefully not a dog's dinner. See, it's not too bad at all. Not too bad at all. So I'm just going to lay it down this way and have a look where, sorry, headbutt you again. Now these two seams, the cross seam, I think I would prefer to have those open so that all this bulk in the middle lays flat. So I'll sew the other bit on first, and then I'll fiddle about and get those open. I'll probably stitch them down. So I've laid it back down again so I can make sure I'm doing the right thing. So that needs to go right sides together with that. And then I'll do that nesty thing again. of the 2 seam allowances, nest them together. Can hardly see what I'm doing. Put a pin in. Yeah, that matches up much better than the other one did. But my only goal is to end up with something that looks vaguely like a star. And that's all, do you see there? Way off. Do I mind? Not a jot. Not a, I can always trim it. If it bothers me when it's done. So I'm just going to whip along that seam in exactly the same way. Push that seam allowance away with my fingers in behind. Do a little back stitch. Oops. Pulled through the weave so open it didn't take the stitch, so I did it again. Go through the base of the seam. Seems to be a lot of telling you what to do in this and not wittering. Push the seam away on the back. I don't know whether that's a good thing or not. I did do, however, lots of wittering this morning, which you will have seen last week with the book bundle video. Get that pin away. That seam allowance needs to go there. Come through the base of the seam allowance. Push the other seam allowance away. How many times can you say seam allowance in one video? Nearly done with the piecing, and then it just becomes a cloth, a little back cloth as I like to call them. A little piece to then stitch on. And you could, if you make a little star and you want to go further with it, you could stitch other things around the edge, you know, make it bigger and just use it as an element. You can do that with all of these pieces, just use it as an element and add to it to make other things. Whoops. I think I'm going to treat myself to some new scissors when I'm in England. I mean, they have scissors in France, but it's very rural here, and so it's a bit of a trek to a city where there are major shops, whereas in England it's handier. Right, so I'm going to lay it down, and you see it is quite lumpy there. So what I'm going to do is just, hopefully not get my head in your way, I'm going to push it apart and open those seams up, basically so I get one seam allowance going one way and one the other, which is quite fiddly, but I'm going to persevere. And then just with my finger, I hope you can see what I'm doing. I really can't do it in the air because I need something to push against. I'll show you once I've done it. And push it open, and then I'm going to pick it up and put some pins, and I think I'm going to pin crossways like that. See what I've done? So I've pinned through those 2 seam allowances across so that they lay flat, and I'm going to do the same here like that, and a third one here like that. Stella, you leaning up against my chair and making it wobble is not helpful. Can you stop it? Oh no, it's not Stella. Oh, guess who it is? No. Fred trying to shin up the back of my chair. Right, and now what I'm going to do is with that same bit of cotton, actually that's not long enough, I'm going to get a new bit. Using the invisible base, I'm going to stitch those seams down, and that is another tip and technique that I've learned from the wonderful Jude Hill over the years, where she uses her invisible, or the invisible base stitch, she calls the glue stitch, just to unify the surface of the cloth. So I'm just coming through that seam allowance. I'm working from the front and doing my little stitch on the top and my bigger stitch behind. And because I've put those pins crossways, you know, I can see them there, but I can stitch over them. Do you see that? I hope it's good if it was in shot and focused. You see, I can stitch over them and they can just stay there until I'm done, and then I can take them out. Yeah. So I'm just doing the invisible baste up one seam allowance, and then I'm going to come back the other way, down the other side. And it's another step, but I think it's worth it because when you're done, you've got a much flatter piece then to do your fancy stitching on. That's Stella's tail banging against the radiator because Fred's winding her up. And I hope they don't start wrestling, because then the big dog doesn't like it and he'll start barking at them. Fred, sorry, I can't work under these conditions. No, stop now. He's really trying to climb up the back of my chair with his claws. And that noise you can hear is Stella's tail bashing against the radiator. Just go down. Now I've got a knot in my thread. Never work with children and animals, that's what they always say, isn't it? Right, so when I get to this end, I'm just going to scoot across to the other side. And come back down the other seam allowance. And those little pins going across don't bother you at all, although they're not bothering me. Sorry, I'm slightly distracted by these animals. Up to no good. Oh, Fred's found an open box, so he's in it. What is it with cats and open boxes? Sorry, I had to flip it over because it felt like it was going going where it shouldn't. And the pins that way round are much less likely to bite you. Don't unthread your thread. They're much less likely to bite you because the points are over there and not, you know, facing your hand. Right, so I've come to the end. I'll finish off just with a couple of back stitches. You can now hear the sounds of wrestling ensuing. Get the pins out. And show you. Sorry about the noise. Stells and Fred, can you go and play on the rug so we can't hear you ticking on the floor? Can you see? Is it focused? So you see I've just done you see the back of my invisible base going down there. So now that seems, you see the difference between that and that? You see, that's now nice and flat and that's all lumpy bumpy. So now I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And, oh dear, now there's something buzzing in here. What is that? Just heard something buzzing over my head. I think it's a punaise, which is French for drawing pin. You know, a thumbtack, I think you call them in the States. And it's a kind of beetle that flies. And they're just coming out of hibernation, I think. And I don't think they do any harm. They don't bite you or anything, certainly. But if you annoy them, they make this smell, which is a bit like, it's described as being like almonds, but I like almonds. I love marzipan and almond paste. I don't like a cat and a dog trashing my studio very much. Can you hear me, you two? Do you even care? Yeah, but I can see what they mean by the smell of almonds, but I find it really unpleasant. So I'm going to go along there in exactly the same way. That thread again is too short. I don't know why my camera seems to keep going out of focus. Maybe it's getting tired because I've used it too much today. My voice certainly is. I hope my voice lasts until the end of the video. Right, so I'm just going to do the same thing again. I'm just going to invisible base those two seams down. Stells, see, the trouble is they stop and then one of them or the other of them starts it again. Stella? Sorry, Fred, I mean. Oh, he's naughty. Little monkey. He's now trying to climb up my design wall, you know, that used to be behind my head before I swapped my room round. I know why. He wants his tea. In fact, I think this is going to get unbearable. I'm going to stop. I'm so sorry, I nearly never do this anymore because I know you don't like it. I'm going to stop. I'm going to go and feed them. And finish basting this, and then I'm going to come back. Unless they calm down while I'm talking, and then I won't. I'll carry on. Because I know you don't like the stop-start. I know you like it to be continuous. They seem to have stopped. I can hear the big dog's tummy rumbling now, mind you. But yeah, Fred, when he needs feeding, or when he wants feeding, he thinks he needs feeding, he can probably live on what he's got stored for about a month. If you don't feed him, he's a tyrant. He comes and annoys you until you do. If you're trying to write something, or, you know, if I'm trying to work on something, he'll come and walk on it. If we're sat watching television, he'll go and sit in front of the television. That's serious grumbling at them. This is both of them now. And Stella is equally annoying. If she wants something, usually to go out in the morning, rather than barking or growling or, you know, making sound herself or whining, she goes and annoys Sirius so that he barks. And I hear that if I'm, you know, if I've just woken up and I'm laying in my bed and I can hear them downstairs in the kitchen, I hear Sirius, and he's got a certain bark that he does, which means that Stella's annoying him, and she just goes sort of wheedling round him, you know, rolling on her back and trying to lick his chops, and I've got a knot. And then he does this sort of quite high-pitched for him squeaky bark. And then, so then we shout, whether it's me or Hans or whatever, we shout, Stella, leave him alone, like that. Or if it's Hans, he does it more crossly than that. We shout, Stella, like that. And people here that don't know say, oh, it wasn't Stella, it was Sirius barking. I say, yeah, I know, but Stella's making him bark. So that's why we're telling her off and not him. Poor old boy, he just wants to be left in peace. Fred's gone off now. The thing is, I'm pretty sure there are biscuits in his dish, because there usually are some. but he doesn't like it if there's only a few. He likes it to be, you know, he likes to have a choice. Right, so that's the other seam done. Now I think I'm going to leave this thread in, attached, so that I can use it to baste the whole thing onto my backing thingy-bob cloth. I think I'm going to stop there, a little way away from the edge, because I might do some trimming. So there's my, do you see it lays much flatter now? Do you see? I'm going to get the pins out. And get my bit of linen, which is a selvage edge here, and I think I want that to be towards the top, but my star can be turned every way, so it doesn't really matter. Yeah, I'm just going to give that a trim there. Do you see that really sticky out part? Without cutting through my thread, hopefully. Which means I'm going to have a cut edge, but can't have everything. That's okay, I'm happy enough with that, so I'm just going to lay that on there. Actually, my backing piece could have been slightly bigger. Oh, before I do that, I'm just going to tell you how big it is. See, it has ended up, it's 4¼ inches square-ish, and I started with 2-inch squares here-ish. So that gives you a very vague idea. So I'm just going to carry on with my invisible baste and just go all around the edge through to my backing cloth, I think. And then I can do some fancy stitching on it. Very good styles. You go on your chair. Fred's gone downstairs in disgust because he was ignored. And hopefully I can just have, you know, 20 minutes or so more peace. It's all gone quiet. The calm after the storm. And while I'm stitching this, I'm thinking about how I want to do some embellishing on the top. I'm not completely sure what I want to do. Oh, you could pin that on if you, obviously if you wanted it to stay put. I feel like I'm not in the, no, I'm creeping off into outer space, where my star is. I don't know why it's called a friendship star, because there are many, many different quilt patterns that involve stars. There's a Ohio star, which has quarter square triangles, known as QSTs. And yeah, various other kinds of stars. There's, you can do paper pieced stars with 60-degree diamonds. And then there's the Star of Bethlehem. I made a huge quilt like that years ago, which I since sold. My daughter's quilt that I showed in the English paper piecing video is made with not hexagons, diamonds. It's nice to make a star from diamonds because, you know, twinkle, twinkle, little star. How I wonder what you are. Like a diamond in the sky. I missed a line out, I know. Oh yes, there's another poem. No, it's Keats. It must be public domain because Keats was a long time ago. Called Had I the Heavens Embroidered Cloths, and it doesn't actually mention stars. She says as she quickly runs through it in her brain. I'll say it for you in the hope that it's, if it is not public domain and they're not allowed, then I shall check and edit it out. But hopefully it is allowed. It goes, had I the heavens embroidered cloths enwrought with golden and silver light, the blue, the dim and the dark cloths of night and light and the half-light, I would spread the cloths under your feet. But I, being poor, have only my dreams. I have spread my dreams under your feet. Tread softly, for you tread on my dreams. I think that is beautiful. And And to call the night sky, the heavens embroidered cloths, I think is also, especially for us textile-y folk. That's probably why that resonates with me so much. Really wants to go wonky there. So there you go, a bit of Keats. You get all kinds of stuff here. So I think what I might do is do some kind of outline stitching around the star. I don't know whether to do it outside it or inside it. And then I think in the dark blue, I think I want to do some kind of little white or cream stitches. And I've got that silk sitting there, which is a little bit shiny because it's silk. I think I want to do seed stitch or French knots or something of that kind to represent little stars in the sky. Am I going to get round with this bit of cotton? I don't think I am. I think if I can get up to this corner. Ooh. Well, it's basting, so I don't have to finish off. I might just squeeze one more stitch out of it. Pull it through to the back. And can I weave it in? Yes! Success. Right, so there's my little star. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. So I think I'm going to use only this. Oh, I've got some already threaded. That's good. Now, do I want to put that? I think I will. I think I'm just going to do smallish running stitches. I'm going to go round the edge onto the blue. Obviously, you can do whatever you want to yours, but this is just what I'm thinking of doing. So I'm about 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the star. Let's see how that looks. Might have to do a little bit of stab stitching in these junctions. I got away with it. Chicken stitching. Yeah, I think that's going to look okay. And I hope you agree that even though I was super wonky, my squares were all off centre and, you know, that it's still a star. And it's quite forgiving if you look into where the points meet. You know, if you're a quilter, we always, as quilters, talk about meeting and matching points and so on. That it's quite forgiving, because when I look, I can see that my points don't meet, but because of the way the star is constructed, it doesn't matter, it still looks like a star. Which was all I was aiming for. A little friendship star. So I don't think I'm going to do any stitching in the star itself. Of course you could if you wanted to. I'm just going to, I'm wondering as well if I might outline stitch the whole square, but I might wait and see till I've done whichever I'm going to do in here. Which I think either seed stitch or French knots. I think I might do French knots. And I might do the ones that I did some on my wonky log cabin on Wonky Wednesday. I made a log cabin. If you haven't seen that video, I think that would have been last Wednesday. I'm losing track of time here because of, you know, pre-recording and so on. It's definitely up already, It was the first episode of Wonky Wednesday I made for my log cabin journal. A little log cabin out of half paper and half cloth. And on the cloth side of it I stitched some French knots that kind of just happened as I was doing it. I just had the desire to make them knot proper, you know, not tension them up so that they were neat little knots. I left them a bit loopy and organic on purpose. I'm wondering if I did something like that so I get them all slightly different sizes. I could also vary the amount of wraps of thread around the needle I did. I think I'm going to have to chicken stitch there. Yeah, I'm liking that little line. It's like it's twinkling. It's twinkling at me. And I'm really wanting to do a rice bag with stars on it. And I've said that. But you know how it is, you have all these ideas. But the rice bag is addictive. I've got a fair few of them myself, and I think I've said before I've given some away and I've sold some and so forth. And there's a lady called Rosie, hello Rosie, who's made, I think I mentioned her before, I don't know how many she's made now, I've lost count, but she's made a lot, and she's got a lovely, in her sewing room, like a coat stand. And I think somebody in her family has adapted it for her, I seem to remember, because on it are hanging her entire collection of rice bags of all different colours and designs and so on. And it's like a little tree that's growing rice bags. It's a wonderful thing to see. But yeah, as well as Rosie, there's been many, many other people who I've seen pictures of rice bags done in various ways. And I myself, you know, I made an English paper pieced one with the hexagons after doing that Hidden Histories Untold Stories week with the English paper piecing. And I'm now thinking I must have a star one. I have to go in and out. In and out. And then try and meet somewhat up with where I started from. So I just guess, or sort of go space, stitch, that's going to work out okay. I just don't like it to be obvious where I stopped and started, but that's just me. So I like to just plan ahead as I'm coming up to the end. There, that looks, yeah. So I can leave that attached because I think I'm going to use that, like I said. Coming up there, I'm going to come up here somewhere. I'm going to decide later if I'm going to perimeter stitch. Actually, I may not because it's so raggedy and it might emphasise its raggediness. So I'm going to do 3 wraps, 1, 2, 3. Go in nearly where I came out. And I'm just, you see, I'm not pulling that super tensioned, I'm just letting it be a bit loose. And see how that looks. So it's a slightly loopy knot. And I'm going to jump over somewhere else. And now, although this is pieced together, I'm just treating it as if it was one cloth because it's all laying nice and flat because I took the time to base those seams. 1, 2, 3, let's do 4 wraps and leave it loopy. Let's just play. So I'm still holding it so it doesn't pull out completely, but I just haven't tensioned it around the needle. You see that? So that's bigger than that, and the loops are... Do you see the loopy loops? I'll hold it up when I'm done, as usual. I think I'm going to do a smaller one. I might just do 2 wraps and pull it quite tightly, like a proper little knot. As all the stars are all different sizes in the sky, or they look different sizes. Some of the stars you see in the sky are no longer there because of the time it takes their light to get to us. Things like that just blow my little mind. I'm just going to vary the number of wraps I do, how much I tension it. There I did 5 wraps. No, I did do 5 wraps, but 3 came off. I'll put 3 more back on. So So that was 5 wraps, but pulled fairly firmly. I'm going to do 2 wraps quite tightly again. I need to do 1 more because there's 6 and I don't like to have even numbers. I like to have odd numbers. I'm going to do 3 and leave it loopy. In fact, I think I'm going to do a couple more down here. I'll do a slightly smaller one here. I might do 2, or I might do 3. So your options are endless. You can vary the wraps and vary the tension and get all different effects just from one stitch. That's a 3 wrap and left quite loopy. And you could go on and, you know, in fact I feel the need to go on and do more. Put as many stars as you want in your little sky. In fact, I'm feeling now I've got those bigger ones that I want to sort of fill in around with littler ones. Until my thread runs out, which is often what I do when I'm stitching any kind of thing. Just stitch till the thread runs out. And that's almost an arbitrary way of deciding how much stitching to do. That's listening to the thread as opposed to listening to the cloth. Just squeeze that last one. Yeah. Let's have a few more. Oops. Oh, excuse my arm, that was rude of me. And if you're up for a bit of science, and why wouldn't you be, because it's interesting, we're all made of stardust, and that sounds like a meme, and it sounds like a hippie thing, but it's actually true. Because here comes Fred again. He's obviously not up for a bit of science, or maybe he has come to listen. All the heavier elements in the universe are forged in the hearts of stars. And the stars, or some stars, become supernova. That's maybe a word you've heard. And they explode. And when they explode, they give the elements that they've forged. They're basically big nuclear reactors, is a less romantic way of putting it. And those elements then become available to form other things, other natural things, you know, elements, all the chemical elements that make up the universe, that make up everything in the universe, including us. So you are perfectly entitled to say that you're made of stardust. Or I once heard a scientist say, I watch these, you know, I watch some of these YouTube lectures or TED Talks or whatever. I can't remember which scientist it was, but it was a man. And he said, or you could say you're made of stardust, or you could say you're made of nuclear waste. And he said it as a joke. And I did find it quite amusing. But I do prefer the analogy of well, it's not even an analogy, it's true, stardust. Yes. I need some loopier ones over here because I've got all a bit neat. Leave that loopy. I think Fred's gone downstairs in disgust, eaten a few biscuits that were in his dish, and now he's come back up. He's on the windowsill. Oh, that one's got a ring round it, that's like Saturn. But I find that there's a lot of poetry in science. It's often there's kind of an imposed division between the arts and the sciences, as if science is cold and hard facts and, you know, all that. And there is, of course, that aspect to it. But when I talked, I think, in the Eco Bundles video about Dr. Suzanne Simard and her Mother Tree project, I hope I'm saying her last name correctly, Simard, because it sounds like French-Canadian to me. I don't know if it is. Simard. But anyway, Simard. About her work as a scientist working, in her case, with trees. That the way she presents the work and talks about the work is very poetic and, you know, speaks to you on an emotional level. And someone else whose book I've read many times, which I like, it's got nothing whatsoever to do with stars now, it's just because I was talking about science and, you know, the poetic side of science. And that is, it's called Braiding Sweetgrass, and it's by a woman called Robin Wall Kimmerer. I'm sure many of you know it. If you don't know it, look it up. It was recommended to me by a very dear friend of mine a couple of years ago, I think. And I ordered it and read it, and then I read it again. And I even gave it to a friend here, a French friend, who speaks some English, but not much. I found it translated into French. And I bought her a copy, and she loved it as well. And there it's the way Robin looks at nature through her. She's a botanist by training. But she has Native American ancestry, and so she talks about how that culture looks at nature and lives with nature, and you know, the relationship with the natural world. So I just think that, you know, all these people who are scientists, someone else I want to mention actually, again, nothing to do with stars, this is about fungi, so it's because I've just done the eco book bundle thing this morning, and I'm still on that. He's an Englishman called Merlin Sheldrake, who's written a book, I can't remember the name of it, oh yes I can, Entangled Life it's called. Yeah, I wanted to mention it in the eco bundle video, but I forgot. It's called Entangled Life, and it's all about fungi. And it's, if you're interested remotely in things like that, it's a fabulous book. He's a completely the archetypal eccentric Englishman, I think, because he explores fungi. How can I say this without getting into YouTube trouble? He explores fungi on every level, you know. How people in the 60s explored mushrooms, let's put it like that. He does that as well, but in a, well, scientific way, shall we say. But he has a real passion for fungi, and it really comes across in his writing. How am I? Yeah, I'm sorry, and nothing to do with stars. Well, it kind of is to do with stars, because everything's connected, isn't it? Stars and fungi. So I'm down into my last little quadrant of space. I'm really liking how those are looking. I haven't talked any more about how to make French knots, but I'm sure you got the idea of what I was doing. Just varying the wraps and varying the tension. And I'm leaping around on the back. Maybe wasting my lovely silk thread. But with French knots, well, I suppose you could plan your route more carefully. I guess what you could also do, it only just occurred to me, if you really wanted to, is you could, on your cloth, draw a constellation, like what we call the plough. I think that our American friends call it the Big Dipper. Is that what you call it? Ursa Major, anyway. You know, that one that it goes like that, like that, like that, and like that, and like that, if I've drawn that correctly, in the air. I think it's the most commonly recognisable one in the night sky. You could draw a constellation and then stitch the stars onto that, or you could then do the little dotted lines, you know, when you see the constellations drawn, with running stitch in between. Actually, there's another star laying right here by my feet. My big dog Sirius is named for the dog star. He is not named for Sirius from Harry Potter. Sirius from Harry Potter is also named for the dog star. Because if you don't know, Sirius in Harry Potter can transform himself into a dog. But my Sirius is called Sirius after the dog star. Because he's a dog and he's also a star. And that is actually, by the by, why we called Stella, who we got later, Stella, because Stella means star. So there you go. I found some star-related things to tell you. And I've finished my last star. And I think I can get away with leaving that attached and use that to stitch it to my book. No, I'm going to use something finer to stitch it to my book. Okie dokie. There's my little friendship star. Quite happy with that this week. Sometimes, you know, I'm always happy with my things one way or another. Even my choicest thing in the end I was happy with. But sometimes you make things and you think, yeah, I'm really liking that. And other times you're just satisfied with it. And sometimes you don't like it at all. That's my last week's, which I've only just done. But you'll have already done a week ago. And my book's getting quite satisfyingly chunky. Sorry, I hope you didn't loom in onto you there. Can I get away with this bit? I think so. Where's my giant paper clip gone now? I'll put it back in here. Excuse my arm. Right. This is where I'm really in danger of headbutting you. Same as always, through the cloth first. So anchor the thread. I wonder if I can get away with stitching in and out. Maybe for the first few I can. Whoops, apart from when that happens. I'm going to have to chicken stitch now. Now, do you know what I've just thought? I know that somewhere in my bead tin is a little silver star. But you know that if I go looking for it now, I won't be able to find it. Because I want it for a dangle. I should have thought of it before, but I didn't, only just thought of it. Let me just get this back through and fastened off. And I'll have a very quick look. And if I can't find it, I'll find it and then I'll show you next week. I can't use this thread for a dangle anyway, I don't think it's too short and fine. I'll stitch another bit on for a dangle if I find my bead. It's also possible that I've used it on something else. Let me just have a quick look. No, just stay there, you don't have to move, I can walk round you. There's a good boy. There's a good boy. I'm getting the bead tin. Just stay there, you're alright, good lad. He gets a bit, you walk near him, I think he's a bit worried because he's have his painful hips. I thought it was in here. Sorry, I've got taken out of shot. Oh, no, that's a flower. No, those are flowers. I thought I had a star. Not many beads. Well, I have got a lot of beads, but I haven't got many beads that I like because they're just broken necklaces that people have given me. And some of them are a bit plasticky and gaudy for my taste. No, I can't see it. I'll have to look, and if I can find it, I'll show you it next week. So I'll just write my date and sign it. I'm having to do a sum in my head because I'm nowhere near this date. It's the 22nd, isn't it? Is it? No, it's the 25th. Yes, the 25th. It's the 25th of March. It's not, you see, it's not the 25th of March at all. Is it the 25th of March? If it's wrong, I'll put a correction on the screen. 25th, 03, 24. Sign it, K3N and a kiss. And underneath, I'm going to write friendship star. Stars. There we go. There we go. There's my friendship star. So that was week. What week was it? I can't remember. Was it week 13? Yeah, week 13. Gosh. So that means we're a quarter of a way through, doesn't it? Yep, we're a quarter of a way through. Doesn't time fly? So anyway, I hope you like that. I hope you have fun doing your own friendship stars, and I look forward to seeing them. And meanwhile, I look forward... No, sorry, I've forgotten what I say now. I'm sorry. Yeah, meanwhile, I look forward to you joining me next time for more Cloth Tales. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, friends one and all. Bye-bye.